Today to give you a presentation about the poverty in schools, some challenges, and I have some specific recommendations for school stakeholders. This is going to be my first speech in a foreign language in front of the higher educated people, so please feel free to ask me to repeat myself if you miss some part of my presentation, because I might ask you to do the same when you ask easy questions to me at the end of the presentation. So, the outline is simple. We will be talking about the definition of poverty and some properties, and after that, we will talk about the relationship between educational processes and poverty, and we will witness some challenges faced by impoverished people and students in schools. And like I said, I have some specific recommendations at the end of the presentation. So, what is poverty? I believe everyone knows what is poverty. It's basically a lack of resources for a functional life, right? But it's not a black or white thing. There are many different levels of being impoverished. We're going to talk about it in a minute. The main thing that poverty affects the functionality of our lives, and for most of the cases, it is chronic and intergenerational. That is worse because if the poverty is intergenerational, that means you were born into a poor family. That makes it even harder. And poverty is restrictive. It can hold people from whatever they want to do, going a nice vacation, sitting in the home doing nothing. So, challenges of being poor or impoverished. If we want to rephrase it with a question, we can ask, what do poor people have to struggle on a daily basis? One of the challenges is neglected and inadequate housing. For some cases, some families cannot even afford electricity or heat in their houses, and for most of the cases, there are not even enough room for everybody in the house. Living in high crime rates, and that triggers a constant stress for poor people, and you have to be careful all the time, and it is a hard way to live. Poor physical and mental health and inability to access good treatments. These two are clearly linked. Being impoverished can lead to lack of nutrition or healthy sleep, and that might trigger physical or mental symptoms in the people. And research says that impoverished people are not able to take any kind of treatments in the hospitals or special institutions. And inability to access education is another challenge. For some cases, I'm talking about the literal inability to access education. Some students cannot even afford to be at school instead of home or work. Living in the overpopulated places, I'm talking about house and the neighborhood. Everybody wants some alone time from time to time, but for impoverished people, it is harder. And lack of green spaces, this is a neglected issue, but green spaces are very important for our physical and mental well-being. Sometimes we want to sit in a bench in the woods and just think about life. But it seems simple, but it turns out to be a luxury. And stigmas, everyone knows stigmas. Impoverished people may be stigmatized like dirty, lazy, or ignorant, and some stuff like that. Classism and discrimination, this is an important issue for impoverished people. Classism is class-based discrimination. And discrimination, when we talk about discrimination, I believe you may have heard of the social identity theory. It's an old theory, but I believe it still applies today. Discrimination leads to an in-group identity among impoverished people. And if there is an in-group, there is an out-group. There is we versus them. impoverished people and privileged people. And that kind of group identity may trigger a conflict between groups, and that makes it even harder to overcome poverty and its challenges. And relying on others. The way I see it, this is the hardest challenge of being impoverished. Why? I'm going to talk about why. There is a study, it's in my phone, I forgot to place it here, but I'm still going to talk about it. It's conducted in 2010 in the United States, and it simply implies that impoverished people can read emotions from people's faces better than privileged people. This sounds interesting in the first place, but if you keep reading the study, you may find the author's arguments, and they say impoverished people relies on their environment. They have to know what's happening in their environment, and they have to keep their social relationships alive for potential life crisis, because their relationships are potentially social support resources. They cannot afford to lose those relationships. That's why they are more open what's going on in their environment, and they can read emotions from people's faces correctly compared to privileged counterparts. It sounds like a good thing, but more than a skill, it sounds like an obligation for impoverished people. Because I'm going to make it sound even more dramatic right now. If you are impoverished, if you are poor, you don't even have the luxury of not talking to people that you don't like. I'm aware that it sounds a little bit dramatic, but it's the fact. Different types of poverty. Like I said, it's not a black or white thing. There are many different types of poverty, and here we see some. Situational poverty is temporary. It can happen after a life crisis like bankruptcy or a natural disaster. Most of the cases, it is temporary. Generational poverty is a tough one because that means you were born into a poor family, and it makes it harder to overcome the poverty. Absolute poverty is a complete lack of resources. I'm talking about survival resources such as food and shelter. And relative poverty, I believe the name gives it away. Relative poverty means that you are impoverished compared to others, and it is not independent from the context. Urban poverty means the impoverished people living in the crowded cities and not being able to afford those cities' demands. Rural poverty is it's the opposite of urban poverty. Rural poverty is being in the rural areas and don't have an access to public services like hospitals or educational institutions. No matter regardless of the type of the poverty, impoverished people have to struggle with the similar challenges, like I said. Let's talk about the relationship between education and poverty. Being impoverished, like I said, can lead to not be able to have a good education and being in a nice school. And lack of functional education can lead to being impoverished. And that makes an endless cycle. If we want to break this cycle as school stakeholders, we have to focus on the education part. We can make students have more skills that overcome poverty, whereas the policymakers and authorities should focus on being impoverished. So now it's the time for challenges faced by impoverished students in schools. Anybody works in a school here? Okay, I believe it's still important for you. I'm going to talk about it anyway. Inability to allocate financial sources for school-related materials. I'm talking about the notebooks, books, or clothing, shoes. It might be hard for impoverished students and families. Lack of participation in extracurricular activities like field trips. Sometimes schools do these kinds of activities free of charge, but sometimes they want money from students. And if so, it is hard to attend these kind of activities for impoverished students. Lack of leisure time. Leisure time is a huge luxury, I believe. And some students, some impoverished students, I'm specifically talking about the college and high school students, they have to work part-time jobs when they are not in school, uh, in summer breaks or the other holidays, and they may have no leisure time for some personal skills, to socialize, to be happy like this. The other challenge faced by impoverished students in schools is low self-efficacy. Impoverished students hear a lot, we can't do that, I can't go, you can't go there, we can afford it. And that's, if this situation is constantly happens, that might trigger a low self-efficacy in school contexts. Low academic expectations, obviously, and being at risk for abuse. If you know someone who has an impoverished background or yourself is coming from an impoverished background, you should know that poor people can do many things for money, and that makes them vulnerable to about being abused. Absenteeism, obviously, is a main problem for schools and students. Low literacy of parents, that makes it hard for students to get help from their parents when it comes to academic tasks. And that's, in a long way, triggers a low academic achievement about students. Discrimination and social exclusion, that happens a lot. Even if we don't want to see it, it is there, it is everywhere. Discrimination and social exclusion based on their social classes. Less functional time with parents, and due to this, a lack of functional relationship with parents and inside the family. And mental health problems. Being impoverished can lead to mental health problems. Why? Why there is a link between two of these? There is many answers to these questions, but I'm just gonna give two of them right now. Being poor means constant stress and anxiety, and that in the long term that might trigger fatigue and mental health problems for impoverished people. The other answer is a specific model. It's belongs to William Ming Liu, and it is conducted in 2013. I'm going to talk about briefly about this model. It gives an answer to the link between mental health and being impoverished. This model claims that everybody lives in an economic culture. Even if we are not aware of this, we tend to evaluate ourselves in the economic and financial by our financial resources, and we tend to compare ourselves with the others. We have a social class in our perceptions. Everybody has a perceived social class in their minds, and there's perception and there is reality. People try to accumulate different kinds of capital, like social capital, cultural capital, and human capital. If there is a balance between the perception and the reality, and that means an homeostasis, no problem. But if there is an unbalance between two of them, that might trigger stress, anxiety, depression, and in the long term, mental health problems. I believe this is a good model for the answer to this question. So, this is our last title for the presentation. I have some specific recommendations for school stakeholders to handle the challenges of being impoverished. The first recommendation is not for us, actually, but I still want to talk about it because financial sources and stable jobs is the prior need for impoverished people. I believe we can all agree on this. But as you might know, this is not something we can provide by our own efforts. Sometimes, as school stakeholders, teachers, school counselors, or principals, we can be agents for impoverished people, families, to make them take benefit from the social helps, I mean the financial helps. But I come from Turkey. In Turkish, we have an old proverb. I want to share it. You cannot spend the water bill by the water you carry in a bucket. There must be an ongoing income. There must be a constant and stable job for all families. Like I said, it seems like not our job. It's more like the authorities' job, but I still want to say this. Let's focus on what can we do in schools. The first one is inclusive classroom atmosphere. This is not a concrete thing for teachers because students can be affected even a slight change in the way you look at them, even a slight change in your tone. We must be careful all the time, and we must be embracing all students regardless of their financial backgrounds. Even if we are not aware of it, maybe we have classist attitudes inside of us, and that is something we must educate ourselves about. Talent screening is another recommendation. Everybody wants to express themselves, right? Everybody wants to be acknowledged and to be recognized. And we want impoverished students to express themselves in healthy ways. If they cannot do that, they might choose to express themselves in violent ways, and we don't want it. That's why at the beginning of the educational year, every year, we have to conduct a talent screening process. We have to know what kind of talents these students have, and so that we can focus on improving their talents. And I believe that might help preventing violence among impoverished students. And risk assessments. In Turkey, school year begins at September, and by the end of November, all school has to have a risk assessment file. We have to know how many students we have coming from impoverished backgrounds, how many students parents are divorced, how many students parents doesn't have literacy. We have to know all kinds of risks for at the beginning of the year, and that's how we can prevent the potential problems. Encouraging attitudes, needless to say, I'm not going to talk about it because I believe I did. And raising awareness among teachers. Like I said, teachers are human, and humans make mistakes. And all humans can classist and discriminative attitudes inside them. And I think we can all agree on this fact. Most of the teachers comes from middle class backgrounds, and they might not be aware of the challenges of being in the working class or lower social classes. We have to educate them. We have to make them know what these challenges are. Preventing classist behaviors among privileged counterparts. There are a lot of bullying at schools based on the financial situation of students, and we have to be careful about that. We have to conduct preventive psychoeducational programs for privileged counterparts. School-family collaboration, it's something important because most of the parents comes from impoverished backgrounds. Okay. They don't want to come to school. They won't return the phone calls comes from school because they believe they have they cannot do anything beneficial to school, but we have to make them believe they can make contributions to school. And that's why from time to time, we can ask for their help. And that's gonna help the collaboration of school and family. And if needed, one-on-one support by school counselors or teachers for impoverished students. In conclusion, everybody needs money for a functional life. And schools are very important to teach that skills that can make money. And that's why none of the school, every school has to embrace all kinds of students, regardless of the students' financial backgrounds. And that was all. Thank you so much for it.
Thank you.